You were trained to speak when silence would have protected you. You were taught to explain when stillness would have unsettled them. You were conditioned to believe that clarity earns respect, that openness builds trust, that if you just articulate yourself better, people will finally understand you. But look at your life honestly. The more you explained, the less they listened. The more you revealed, the less they valued you. The more available you became, the more disposable you felt. That wasn't coincidence. That was conditioning. You were raised inside a system that rewards exposure and punishes restraint. A system that teaches you to empty yourself out emotionally, verbally, psychologically, until there's nothing left to defend. And once you are fully visible, fully readable, fully predictable, you are no longer a threat. You are a resource. Here is the truth that pierces the mind if you let it land. The world does not respect what it fully understands. It respects what it cannot read. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, long before self-help turned vulnerability into a performance. He knew that power does not announce itself. It observes. It withholds. It lets others reveal themselves while it remains closed, calm, unreactive. And the moment you realize this, everything you've been taught about being nice collapses. Think about the people who command rooms without raising their voice, the ones who don't justify their decisions, the ones who don't rush to clarify misunderstandings, the ones who don't argue when disrespected. They say almost nothing, and yet the atmosphere bends around them. That isn't luck. That isn't charisma. That is psychological gravity. You've been told that when someone crosses a line, the mature thing is to explain how you feel, to open up, to make them understand your perspective. But every time you do that, you expose your pressure points. You show them exactly where their words land. You hand them a blueprint of your internal world. Humans don't need malice to exploit weakness. They do it instinctively. Just like water finds cracks, people push where resistance is lowest. And emotional transparency, when offered to the wrong audience, is not strength. It is access. Access creates entitlement. And entitlement kills respect. You think you're being authentic when you explain yourself. What you're actually doing is negotiating your worth. You think you're being reasonable when you defend your choices. What you're actually doing is signaling doubt. You think you're being honest when you react emotionally. What you're actually doing is teaching people how to move you. This is the game you didn't know you were playing. And the rule is simple. Whoever reacts first loses the frame. Power is not loud. Power is composed. Power is the ability to feel everything and reveal nothing. When you are predictable, you are manageable. When you are readable, you are controllable. When people know exactly how you'll respond, they stop respecting you. Not because they dislike you, but because certainty breeds contempt. Mystery, on the other hand, creates caution. When someone doesn't know whether you'll forgive them or erase them from your life, they move differently. When they can't tell if they've crossed a line, they become self-monitoring. When your silence replaces your explanations, their imagination does the work for you. And imagination is far more terrifying than confrontation. Silence is not absence. Silence is a vacuum. And humans cannot tolerate vacuums. When you don't react, they fill the gap with doubt. When you don't explain, they fill it with fear. When you don't chase understanding, they fill it with projection. Suddenly they're wondering what you're thinking. Suddenly they're questioning their position. Suddenly they're recalculating the power dynamic. All without you saying a word. This is where most people misunderstand Machiavellian thought. This is not about cruelty. This is not about intimidation. This is not about dominating others for ego. This is about control over self, the ability to sit in tension without relieving it, the discipline to let discomfort exist without rescuing others from it, the restraint to allow silence to speak instead of scrambling for approval. You were taught that being liked and being respected are the same thing. They are not. Being liked makes you safe. Being respected makes you untouchable. And safety without leverage invites violation. People don't treat you based on what you deserve. They treat you based on what they believe you will tolerate. Every time you over-explain, over-forgive, over-accommodate, you teach them one lesson. Crossing you is inexpensive. Machiavelli warned that men judge more by appearances than by truth, not because they are evil, but because perception is faster than understanding. And when you appear emotionally exposed, endlessly accessible, eager to clarify yourself, you are perceived as low risk. Low-risk things are handled carelessly, so the shift begins here. You stop narrating your inner world. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop reacting on cue. You become a closed system, not cold, controlled, not cruel, deliberate, not silent out of fear, but silent out of choice. Like a deep lake with no visible bottom, calm on the surface, dangerous in depth. Let them wonder, let them guess, let them adjust. Because the moment people cannot read you, they begin to respect you. Not because they like you more, but because uncertainty forces caution. And caution is the first signal of power. From here forward, understand this. The loud are noticed. The emotional are used. The predictable are controlled. But the unreadable, they are remembered. Now let's go deeper, because silence by itself isn't magic. Silence without structure is just emptiness. And emptiness can look like weakness if you carry it the wrong way. There are two kinds of silence. One is the silence of fear, the silence of someone who wants to speak but can't, the silence of someone shrinking, avoiding eye contact, hoping the moment passes. That silence feels small. People sense it. Your body betrays you. Your posture collapses. Your energy asks for permission. But the second kind is the silence of power. It's chosen. It's stable. It's calm enough to make other people nervous. This is what most people never practice. Staying still while tension rises. Not rushing to fix the mood. Not rushing to explain. Not rushing to rescue the other person from the discomfort you didn't create. Because here's what happens when you truly master silence. The other person starts talking. They talk more than they planned. They say things they didn't mean to reveal. They fidget. They laugh. They justify. They soften their tone. They search your face for a reaction that never comes, and every extra word they spill is information. Their fears, their motives, their insecurity, their strategy. Meanwhile, you're giving them nothing. That imbalance, information flowing one way, is control. Most people think power comes from saying the perfect thing, but in real life, the person with the most power in the room is usually the one who is least emotionally forced to speak, the one who can hold their frame while everyone else tries to regain comfort. Silence creates a void, and humans hate voids, so they fill it with paranoia, with guilt, with imagination. And imagination is the most brutal interrogator on earth. If you want a clean demonstration, remember this. When someone insults you and you immediately respond, you're playing their game. Their insult was a hook. Your reply is the bite. The moment you bite, they're controlling the pace, the rhythm, the direction. But when they throw the hook and you don't bite, When you simply look at them, calm, unreadable, something breaks inside them. Because their attack was built for your reaction. They prepared for your words. They prepared for your anger. They prepared for your defensiveness. But silence, they have no script for silence. Silence is like a locked door in the middle of a hallway they expected to walk through. Suddenly their momentum dies. Suddenly they have to improvise. And most people are weak when they have to improvise. This is why the quiet ones are so dangerous. Not because they are stronger, because they are harder to predict. And the human mind, at its core, is always scanning for one thing: certainty. If someone can't read you, they can't categorize you. If they can't categorize you, they can't control you. If they can't control you, they become careful. That's the chain. Respect is rarely admiration first. It's caution first. That's why Machiavelli's insight still rules modern life. People judge by what they can see, and what they can see is not your heart, not your intentions, not your moral purity. They see your posture, your eye contact, your reaction speed, your stability. So, if you want to weaponize silence, your body must support it. Your stillness must look intentional. Your eyes must stay steady. Your breathing must stay slow. Your face must remain neutral, not angry, not wounded, not pleading. Think of it like this. A predator doesn't tremble while stalking. It moves with control. The calm itself is the threat. Not because it's violent, but because it signals capability. Now, here's where your thinking unlocks. Silence isn't just something you do when attacked. Silence is a lifestyle choice if you want true leverage. Because the more you speak, the more you leak. And the more you leak, the more people can map you. Every time you explain your motives, you expose a lever. Every time you confess your insecurities, you expose a button. Every time you show how someone's words affect you, you expose a wound. And in a world of strategic people who may smile while measuring you, exposed wounds are invitations. This is why overcommunication is a modern weakness. You've been taught to talk it out with people who don't deserve your inner world. You've been taught to process emotions in front of people who would rather weaponize them than understand them. You've been taught to believe you owe closure, reassurance, detailed reasoning. But you don't owe people access. Access is a privilege. Understanding is earned, and explanations are costly. The strongest people don't explain because they don't need to. Their decisions stand like stone. You can dislike them, but you can't move them. And what happens when you become that way? People stop pushing. Not because you argued better, because you stopped giving them handles. Most manipulation requires grip points, a need for approval, a fear of conflict, a habit of justifying yourself. Remove the grip points, and their hands slide off. So the next time someone tests you with disrespect, don't rush to defend your dignity with words. Let your silence do something far more powerful. Let it force them to confront their own behavior. Hold the eye contact. Let the pause stretch. 5 seconds feels like an hour when someone is guilty. 10 seconds feels like drowning. And in that drowning, they reveal who they are. You become the mirror. They become the performer. Now we reach a critical Machiavellian law. If your silence is a weapon, your words must become rare. When you speak too often, your words become cheap. When you respond instantly, your attention becomes predictable. When you are always available, your presence becomes ordinary. And ordinary things are treated without reverence. You need your presence to have weight. That means you don't fill every gap. You don't answer every provocation. You don't offer explanations to people who haven't earned them. You begin living like a sealed vault, not because you're hiding, because you're protecting what's valuable. A king doesn't leave the treasury door open to prove he's honest. He locks it because he understands human nature. And Machiavelli was obsessed with human nature, not human ideals. This is the shift. You stop trying to be understood by everyone. You stop seeking emotional agreement. You stop trying to convert disrespect into harmony. You replace that old instinct with a colder, sharper one. Observation. When they provoke you, you observe. When they question you, you observe. When they mock you, you observe. And what you're observing is not their words. It's their motive. Because disrespect is usually not about you. It's a probe, a test, a little flick to see if you will wobble. So, instead of answering their words, you answer the power move. And you answer it by refusing to move. Like a mountain that doesn't argue with the wind. That metaphor matters, because the mountain doesn't win by yelling back. The mountain wins by being unmoved. The wind exhausts itself. The mountain remains. That is your new model. And if you can hold this frame consistently, something strange begins to happen. People start projecting power onto you that you might not even have. They assume you're calculated. They assume you're ruthless. They assume you're thinking further ahead than you are. Not because you told them, because they couldn't confirm you weren't. And in a world ruled by perception, that assumption becomes your armor. Now, understand something important. You are not becoming silent to play games. You are becoming silent to stop being controlled. You are becoming unreadable to stop being manipulated. You are becoming measured so you can choose your battles instead of being dragged into them. Because the person who can be provoked on command is not free. Freedom begins when you can feel the bait and still refuse. And that brings us to the next layer, one of the most dangerous habits you have right now. Over-explaining. Not because explaining is always wrong, but because explaining, in the wrong hands, turns into begging. And once someone senses you're begging for understanding, they know they own the frame. Over-explaining feels harmless. It even feels virtuous. You tell yourself you're being clear, mature, reasonable. But beneath the surface, over-explaining is not communication. It's submission disguised as logic. Because the moment you explain yourself to someone who already doubts or disrespects you, you've accepted their authority to question you. That's the trap. Think about how it actually unfolds. Someone challenges your decision, questions your choice, doubts your judgment, and immediately something inside you tightens. You feel the urge to justify, to lay out your reasons, to prove that you thought it through. You think you're strengthening your position, but what you're really doing is telling them, my decision requires your approval to stand. And once you give someone that signal, they don't stop. They press harder. They poke holes. They ask follow-up questions. They act confused, not because they want clarity, but because they smell leverage. In Machiavellian terms, this is how power leaks out of men without them realizing it. Authority does not explain itself downward. Powerful people decide, and then they let the decision exist. Solid, non-negotiable, not emotional, not defensive, not open for debate. When you over-explain, you create seams, and seams invite pulling. Every reason you give becomes a point of attack. Every justification becomes something they can disagree with. And suddenly you're not defending a choice anymore. You're defending your identity. This is why the more you explain, the weaker your position feels. Because explanations are infinite, but authority is final. Picture two scenarios. In the first, someone asks why you made a certain decision. You launch into a paragraph. You outline your thinking. You soften your tone. You maybe even apologize for how it affects them. In the second, Someone asks the same question and you calmly say, "That's what I decided," and then you stop talking. Which version of you looks harder to move? Silence after a decision is not arrogance, it's self-trust. Most people never develop it because they are addicted to validation. They want agreement. They want reassurance. They want to feel understood. But Machiavelli's world, and yours, is not built on fairness. It's built on perception, and people perceive certainty as strength, even when they don't like it. This is where the fox and the lion come in. The fox recognizes traps. The lion refuses to step into them. A challenge disguised as a question is still a challenge, and many questions are not curiosity. They're pressure. Why would you do that? Don't you think that's a bit much? Are you sure that's the best choice? These are not neutral inquiries. They are attempts to make you second-guess yourself in public. And the moment you start defending, you've already lost the frame. Powerful people don't argue with doubt. They let doubt bounce off them. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean you never explain anything. It means you become selective. You explain to equals. You explain to those who have earned access. You explain in private, not under pressure, not in response to disrespect, but to people who test you, who probe you, who challenge you from below. You give them nothing, because explanation is a gift, and gifts given to the wrong people become weapons. Here's the deeper layer most men miss. When you explain yourself, you're not clarifying, you're revealing insecurity. Even if your logic is flawless, the act of defending communicates uncertainty. And humans are incredibly sensitive to this. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. Confidence isn't proven by words. It's proven by the absence of need. That's why repetition without elaboration is one of the most powerful tools you can develop. I've decided. This is what I'm doing. That doesn't work for me. No apology, no story, no emotional cushioning, just calm finality. When you repeat your position without escalating, people eventually stop pushing, not because you convince them, but because there's nothing to grab onto. You've turned yourself into smooth stone. And this brings us to a critical shift in identity. You stop needing people to understand you. Understanding is overrated. Respect is functional. Many men stay trapped because they want harmony more than leverage. They want to be seen as reasonable. They want others to get it. But Machiavelli would tell you something colder and more liberating. Being understood is not required to be obeyed, and it's not required to be respected. In fact, many of the most powerful figures in history were deeply misunderstood. What mattered was not that people agreed with them, but that people adjusted their behavior around them. That is the metric. So ask yourself, when you explain yourself, are you actually making progress, or are you just trying to soothe discomfort? Because discomfort is not a problem. It's a signal. When someone feels uneasy around your boundary, that unease means the boundary is working. Don't erase it. Silence after a boundary is enforcement. This is where most people panic. They think silence means escalation. They think not explaining makes them look guilty or unreasonable. But that fear is a leftover from a time when your survival depended on approval. You don't need approval anymore. You need alignment. And alignment only happens when people know you cannot be moved by pressure. Here's the metaphor that locks this in. Imagine a locked door. A weak door rattles when you knock. A strong door doesn't answer at all. Which one feels more secure? Over-explaining is a rattling door. Silence is reinforced steel. Once you internalize this, your entire posture in life changes. You speak less. You decide faster. You tolerate less nonsense. And people start to feel it, even if they can't name it. They feel that questioning you is expensive. They feel that pushing you is risky. They feel that access to you is conditional. And that feeling changes how they treat you. Not because you demanded respect, because you stopped negotiating your worth. Now, this alone would already put you ahead of most people. But if you stop here, if you become consistently cold, consistently distant, consistently unreactive, you create a new problem. Predictable silence is still predictability. And predictability, no matter the form, eventually becomes exploitable. Which brings us to the next layer, strategic unpredictability. Because true power doesn't live in one mode. It lives in the ability to shift without explanation. And that's where things become genuinely dangerous. Here's where most people misunderstand power. They think once they learn silence, they must live inside it permanently. Cold all the time. Distant all the time. Unavailable all the time. And they believe that consistency is strength. It's not. Consistency is comfort. And comfort is something others learn to exploit. True power is not rigidity. It is fluid control. Strategic unpredictability is what separates the merely intimidating from the genuinely untouchable. Because when people can map your behavior, when they know you are always silent, always distant, always withdrawn, they adjust. They stop fearing you. They start planning around you. Unpredictability keeps them awake. Think of it like this. A storm that always hits at the same hour becomes a schedule. A storm that arrives without warning becomes legend. Power works the same way. Sometimes you are warm, present, engaged. You listen. You give attention. You let someone feel seen. And just when they believe they understand you, just when they relax, your temperature changes. Not emotionally, strategically. The same behavior that earned closeness yesterday earns distance today. The same words that once received patience now meet silence. There is no announcement, no explanation, no justification. Confusion follows, and confusion is leverage. People don't fear cruelty. They fear inconsistency they can't decode. When they can't predict which version of you they'll encounter, they stay alert. They monitor themselves. They choose words carefully. They hesitate before pushing boundaries. That hesitation is respect. Now, understand this clearly. Strategic unpredictability is not chaos. It is not moodiness. It is not instability. You are not reacting randomly. You are responding based on internal rules you never reveal. Your standards remain fixed. Your values remain solid. Your reactions vary. That distinction is critical. To them, it feels arbitrary. To you, it is precise. Maybe you tolerate something once because you're observing. Maybe you cut it off later because the pattern is clear. To them, it feels sudden. To you, it was decided long ago. This is what makes you impossible to read. People are desperate to find patterns. They want rules. They want predictability. When they can't find it, they project. They guess. They assume. And most of the time, they assume you are far more dangerous than you actually are. That assumption protects you. Combine unpredictability with silence, and you create a psychological dead zone. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you'll tolerate. They don't know if you're done or just watching. So, they behave. Not because you demanded it, because uncertainty forces discipline. Here's the part most people get wrong. They think unpredictability means emotional extremes. It doesn't. Your emotions stay controlled. What changes is access. Sometimes you reply quickly. Sometimes you don't reply at all. Sometimes you forgive instantly. Sometimes you withdraw permanently. Sometimes you engage deeply. Sometimes you barely acknowledge presence, and you never explain why. Explanation would collapse the mystery. Remember this metaphor. You are not a rule book. You are a terrain. People don't read terrain. They feel it. And when terrain is unpredictable, movement becomes cautious. This is why powerful figures throughout history were never fully available. They appeared when it mattered. They vanished when it strengthened their position. Their presence was intentional. Their absence was felt. Scarcity is not cruelty. Scarcity is signal. When you are always accessible, your value drops. When your presence must be earned, it rises. Distance recalibrates importance, and this doesn't just apply to others. It reshapes you. You stop overgiving. You stop over-explaining. You stop leaking energy. You begin to act from choice, not habit. Strategic unpredictability turns your life from something others navigate easily into something they must approach carefully. And careful behavior is the foundation of respect. You are no longer the man people test casually. You are the man they pause before engaging, not because you threaten, but because you are no longer predictable. And once unpredictability becomes part of your presence, a final transformation begins. One that forces you to choose between two identities most men never question. The loyal, obedient, emotionally open creature, or the silent, sovereign force that moves on its own terms. That choice is older than civilization itself, and it has a name. There are two archetypes living inside every man. One is domesticated, the other is wild. The domesticated one seeks approval. It stays close. It reacts quickly. It explains itself. It wants to be liked, chosen, included. It survives by being useful, safe, predictable. That is the dog. The dog is fed. The dog is praised. The dog is owned. And ownership always comes with control. Then there is the other archetype. Silent, watchful, unimpressed by approval. It doesn't bark at everything. It doesn't chase validation. It doesn't explain its movements. It observes. It waits. And when it acts decisively. That is the wolf. The wolf is not loved. The wolf is not invited everywhere. But the wolf is never taken lightly. Nobody owns a wolf. This is the final awakening Machiavelli forces you to confront. You cannot be endlessly liked and deeply respected at the same time. Those energies pull in opposite directions. One seeks comfort. The other demands distance. Being feared is not about intimidation. It's about consequence. It's about the quiet understanding that access to you is not guaranteed and can be revoked without warning. The moment people realize you are willing to disappear without drama, without explanation, without negotiation, something changes. They stop testing you. They stop pushing boundaries. They stop assuming. Fear enters, not fear of harm, but fear of loss. And fear of loss is what keeps respect alive. This is the balance most men never achieve. Respect paired with consequence. Value paired with withdrawal. Warmth paired with the ability to go cold without guilt. You don't threaten, you don't lecture, you don't punish. You remove access, silently, cleanly, permanently if needed. And removal is louder than rage. Absence forces reflection. Silence forces accountability. The vacuum you leave behind teaches lessons your words never could. This is not cruelty. This is self-respect, enforced. The world trained you to over-explain, to forgive endlessly, to remain emotionally open to everyone. And all that did was teach people they could disrespect you safely. That era ends here. From now on, you speak less. You react slower. You reveal nothing that hasn't been earned. You let silence do the heavy lifting. You let absence educate. You let consequences speak. Because the loud are noticed. The emotional are used. The predictable are controlled. But the unreadable, they are feared. They are respected. They are remembered. Machiavelli never ruled through force. He ruled through perception. And now, so do you. Say nothing, reveal nothing, command fear, command respect, and never explain why.